Hey everyone, and welcome back to HOA Stories, where we dive headfirst into the kind of neighborhood drama that makes you want to pack your bags and move to the moon. Today, we're kicking off a story that's so wild, so unbelievable, you're going to be talking about it for weeks. This isn't just about a petty dispute. This is about a full-blown land grab, a massive fraud, and a homeowner who played the longest, most patient game of revenge you've ever seen. Imagine this: you get a call out of the blue telling you that you've inherited a piece of land. Not just any land, but 47 beautiful, undeveloped acres in Colorado, sprawling forests, a babbling creek, mountain views, total peace. Sounds like a dream, right? A quiet escape, maybe a place to build a little cabin one day. Well, for our main character, let's call him Alex, that dream quickly turned into a living nightmare. Because when Alex finally made the trip out to see his inherited paradise, he found something truly shocking. Something that would make your jaw hit the floor. But here's where things got really, really strange. When Alex first saw the land, he didn't see an empty forest. He saw roads, paved, perfectly new roads snaking through what should have been untouched wilderness. He saw cul-de-sacs, streetlights, and unbelievably, foundations being poured. Construction crews were everywhere, yellow bulldozers tearing up trees, cement mixers humming. It wasn't just a few houses, it was an entire neighborhood. A massive planned subdivision rising right there, right on the land his family had owned for generations. And the name on the big, fancy entrance sign? Whispering Pines Estates. It had an HOA logo right next to it. Can you even imagine that? You show up to your inherited property and someone else is building a whole town on it. What would you even do in that situation? Seriously, tell me in the comments below, because Alex was absolutely floored. Alex, a quiet guy, a history buff who preferred old books to shouting matches, tried to stay calm. His first thought was, there must be a mistake, a mapping error, maybe a clerical mix-up. He pulled out the old, hand-drawn map his grandfather had left him, a map that clearly showed the boundaries. He then looked at the brand-new, professionally designed sign for Whispering Pines Estates, gleaming in the Colorado sun. The new roads, the freshly laid curbs, the sheer scale of the operation, this wasn't a mistake. This was a hostile takeover. He drove slowly through the budding development. Homes were framed, some even had roofs. Kids' bikes lay on driveways that shouldn't exist. He saw cheerful banners advertising luxury living, and your dream home awaits. Every sign, every perfect little cul-de-sac was a punch to the gut. This wasn't just on his land, it was his land being erased and replaced right before his eyes. Now Alex wasn't some hothead. He didn't immediately storm a construction site. He went straight to the county record's office. He brought his grandfather's original deed, the one passed down through the family, dating back to the 1940s. It was old, a bit faded, but undeniably legitimate. He sat across from a bewildered county clerk, who looked from Alex's ancient document to the glossy development plans on her screen. There it was, clear as day. Whispering Pines Estates, Phase 1, 2, and 3, all overlapping perfectly with Alex's parcel number. It was undeniable. The HOA, or rather the developer behind it, had simply built on his land. The clerk, flustered, brought in her supervisor. They checked, rechecked, pulled up old plat maps, cross-referenced with new digital surveys. And the conclusion? Alex was right. His family owned the land, all 47 acres of it. The new subdivision had essentially squatted on his inheritance. But here's where Alex made a decision that would define this entire saga. A decision that, when you hear it, will probably make you yell at your screen. Instead of immediately filing a lawsuit, instead of halting construction, instead of calling the local news, Alex did something else entirely. Something bold, something risky, and ultimately something brilliant. He went home. He went home, sat on his porch, and watched. He watched the construction trucks continue. He watched the houses go up, floor by floor, roof by roof. He watched the for sale signs appear, then flip to sold. He watched families move in, cars fill driveways, kids play in yards that were legally his. He waited. He quietly gathered more evidence, observed the HOA's meetings from a distance, bought a tiny drone, and started documenting everything. He let them finish. All 96 homes. Now, why would anyone do that? Why let someone build an entire luxury neighborhood on your property and not immediately stop them? That's the question that haunted Alex, and it's the question that sets up the rest of this story. He had a plan, a long-game strategy that was so audacious, so calculated, it still gives me chills. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button. It really helps us make more videos like this. Because what Alex was planning, what he was waiting for, was a showdown. A courtroom battle where he wouldn't just win back his land, but he would absolutely crush the HOA and the developer behind it. He was letting them dig their own grave, and trust me, it was a very, very deep hole. But who was this developer? And how did they manage to pull off such a massive land theft without anyone noticing? That, my friends, is where things get even more tangled. And the answer involves a powerful, ruthless figure who thought they were above the law. Remember the beautiful, sprawling acreage Alex inherited? It wasn't just forest. It included a small, secluded pond area in the back, a perfect, peaceful spot. Alex wasn't living in a house on the property yet, but he was spending weekends there, just camping, exploring the boundaries, and quietly setting up his surveillance equipment. His plan was to collect enough evidence of the HOA's bad faith before the big reveal. To make his weekend trips a bit easier, he did two simple things. He put up a small, prefab storage shed, the kind you get from a big box store for your tools, and he created a simple wooden bench near the pond. Total cost? Maybe $500 and a weekend of work. Harmless, right? But this is an HOA story, and when there's an HOA, there's always a main villain. Meet Randall Thorne. Randall wasn't just the HOA president. He was the head of Thorne Development, the company that built the entire Whispering Pines estates. This man didn't just live in the development, he owned it in every way that mattered. He was slick, always in a tailored blazer, and had the kind of forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. He saw the world as his personal chess board and Alex's inheritance, just a misplaced pawn. Alex knew Randall was bad news. He'd seen Randall's construction crews, heard his name whispered at the county office. But their first face-to-face meeting? It was a masterpiece of entitled arrogance. Alex was working near his new shed one afternoon when a black SUV silently pulled up. Out stepped Randall Thorne, clipboard in hand, looking like he was about to deliver a cease and desist to a squirrel. "You must be the gentleman who keeps camping back here," Randall said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact and mild disgust. Alex stood up, covered in sawdust. "I'm Alex, and this is my land." Randall laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh. "Let's be clear, Alex. This land belongs to Whispering Pines Estates according to the plat map filed with the county. Your little campsite is an eyesore, and that structure," he pointed a polished finger at Alex's tiny shed. "That's a code violation, a threat to community aesthetics, and frankly, a trespass." Alex just looked at him, totally calm. He knew the legal truth, but he was sticking to his game plan. "I own this parcel, Mr. Thorne. I have the original deed. My shed is on my property." Randall barely glanced at him. "Your deed is an antique, Alex. We have modern surveys, title insurance, and most importantly, 96 homeowners who rely on the HOA to keep their property values high. You're disrupting that. You have 72 hours to remove that shed and your campsite, or we will have our team do it and bill you for the cost." This is the key point, guys. Randall wasn't just acting like a petty HOA president over a shed. He was doing this to establish control. He needed Alex gone because Alex's presence, even just camping, was a silent threat to his entire fraudulent development. He was testing the waters, trying to scare Alex off with cheap legal intimidation. Now, what would you do if you're HOA president, or in this case, the developer who built the entire HOA on your land, tried this? Would you fight them right there, or would you stick to Alex's plan? I'd love to know what you would do below. Alex didn't budge. He stayed silent. Randall took the silence as submission. He gave Alex one last condescending look, got back in his SUV, and drove off, leaving behind a crisp, official-looking violation notice taped to the shed. Alex picked up the notice, which detailed fines of $100 per day for the unapproved temporary structure. He just smiled, folded it neatly, and slipped it into his pocket. He was letting the fines stack up. He was letting Randall think he was winning. Because every fine, every threat, every piece of paper was another piece of evidence in the massive lawsuit Alex was building. He was making Randall's inevitable fall that much harder. The conflict didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, the harassment escalated. The HOA put up no trespassing signs all over Alex's land. They installed security cameras pointed straight at his shed. One morning, Alex found a load of construction debris, old pipes and broken cement, dumped right next to his camp area, a clear act of intimidation. But the biggest sign of their desperation came next. Alex woke up one Saturday to the sound of chainsaws. The HOA had ordered a landscaping crew to come in and clear a huge swath of trees, including several ancient, beautiful pines, right up to the supposed Whispering Pines property line. This was no longer about a shed. This was about destroying the natural beauty of the land to mark their territory, and Alex knew he had to act soon. He ran out, yelling at the crew, demanding they stop. They simply handed him a document, an emergency resolution passed by the HOA board, claiming the trees were a fire hazard and needed immediate removal. Alex looked at the destruction, looked at the document, and realized the clock was ticking. They were going to bulldoze him right off his own land if he didn't pull the trigger on his legal case. The developer, Randall Thorne, was not just building homes. He was trying to erase all evidence that Alex's family had ever owned the place. Alex went straight to his hidden safe box, pulled out the dusty, century-old original deed, and took one last look at the name on the official violation notice from the HOA. He was done waiting. The time for the silent game was over. The time for the devastating legal attack was about to begin. Got it. I will jump straight into the rising action without. The welcome back recap, maintaining the flow of the ongoing narrative. When we left off, Alex had just made the critical decision. The silent observation period was over. The $100 a day fines for his little storage shed, just noise. But when Randall Thorne, the HOA president and developer, sent a crew to illegally cut down Alex's heritage trees, that was an invasion. That was a clear sign that Randall was getting desperate and was willing to destroy Alex's property to maintain his multi-million-dollar lie. The destruction of those trees was the point of no return. Alex had to fight fire with fire, but he needed more than just the old deed. He needed proof of Randall's intent. He needed the smoking gun. Alex's first move was to double down on his surveillance. He took the violation notices, the photos of the downed trees, and the footage from his hidden drone showing the entire subdivision, Whispering Pines Estates, and he went back to the county records office, this time with a specific target, the original development applications. He spent days in the dusty archives, digging through stacks of documents related to Thorne development. What he found wasn't just a mistake. It was a deliberate, calculated pattern of deceit. The first clue was a small, almost invisible modification on a county plat map. When Randall Thorne first submitted his plan for Whispering Pines, he knew Alex's 47 acres were private property. The initial boundary lines clearly respected the ancient parcel, but on a later revision, one approved by a single, suspiciously rushed vote at the Town Planning Commission, the boundary line had been conveniently shifted by 200 feet. Just enough to swallow all 47 acres of Alex's land and make room for those crucial 96 luxury home lots. Alex felt a cold wave wash over him. This wasn't negligence. This was outright fraud. The harassment in the neighborhood was also escalating quickly. Now that Alex had ignored the initial violation notices, Randall ordered a new, more aggressive tactic. The HOA began using their own contractors to repeatedly interfere with Alex's property. One day, a landscaping crew showed up and started spraying industrial-strength weed killer on Alex's creek bank, claiming the natural growth was untidy and harboring pests. Alex confronted them, showing them his deed. The contractor just shrugged and said, "Look, man, I just follow the HOA's work order. They pay real well to make sure this area looks market-ready." Alex realized the HOA was literally trying to turn his private, beautiful acreage into a manicured golf course for the benefit of the neighboring subdivision. This wasn't about aesthetics. It was about devaluing Alex's property to make it look like just another piece of the HOA's common area. What would you do if your HOA tried this? If they sent people onto your land, sprayed chemicals, and tried to destroy your environment? I'd love to know in the comments below. The final straw, the one that broke Alex's patience and forced his legal team into action, was the arrival of the heavy machinery. Alex was sleeping in his small camper when he was jolted awake by a terrifying noise, the roar of a large engine and the heavy thud of metal. He rushed outside in his pajamas. A massive excavator had been moved right up to the boundary of his property and was actively digging a deep, wide trench. When Alex ran over, the foreman, a gruff, scarred man, showed him a work order. Randall Thorne had ordered the construction of a mandatory community drainage ditch, claiming Alex's undeveloped land was causing runoff issues for the new homes. This drainage ditch was strategically placed to run straight through the area. Alex wanted to build his own family cabin one day, effectively cutting his property in half and making it unusable. This was Randall's final move to cripple Alex's land value before the inevitable legal fight. "Stop right there," Alex yelled, brandishing a copy of his certified deed. "You are trespassing. This is private property." The foreman barely looked up. "I don't care about your paper. The HOA paid us to dig. We dig." Alex realized this wasn't just harassment anymore. It was an act of economic violence. Randall Thorne was pouring concrete on Alex's inheritance, forcing him to choose between watching his land be destroyed or starting a legal war that he might not have the money to finish. Alex looked at the towering excavator tearing up the soil, and he knew he couldn't wait another day. He needed to find a powerful legal ally, someone who saw not just a land dispute, but a massive, scandalous act of fraud that would make headlines. He needed someone who could appreciate the devastating genius of his strategy, letting them build the entire subdivision before striking. The game was now fully on, and the next person Alex would meet wasn't an HOA Karen, but someone deep within the legal system who had a long-standing, personal score to settle with Randolph Thorne. Understood. I'll integrate the call to action naturally at the start of the next part while maintaining the fast-paced narrative and high tension. If you've been following this story, you know Alex has watched the HOA and the developer Randolph Thorne build 96 luxury homes on his family's inherited land. He let them do it. He let them escalate the harassment, fines, tree cutting, and even sending an excavator to carve a massive ditch through his property. Now he's ready to strike back. And hey, if you're hooked on this story about massive HOA fraud and ultimate revenge, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss the epic finale of this courtroom drama, and it really supports the channel. The game had changed. Alex wasn't looking for a settlement anymore. He was looking for a total demolition of Randolph Thorne's scheme. And to do that, he needed an absolute, undeniable smoking gun. Alex knew the fraud had to be buried in the public records. That's how these land thefts always work. He went back to the county clerk's office, but this time he didn't look at the deeds or plat maps. He looked for anything that connected Randolph Thorne to the local government. His hunch paid off. Buried deep in the archives, under meeting minutes for the obscure Town Planning and Zoning Committee, Alex found what he was looking for. It was the record of the meeting where the Whispering Pines Estates plan was rubber-stamped, and the boundary line mysteriously shifted to include Alex's 47 acres. The resolution had been passed by a 3-2 vote. And who were the 3 yes votes? A committee member named Cynthia Moss, whose nephew was recently hired as Thorne Development's chief landscaper. A local politician, Councilman Jenkins, who received a suspiciously large donation from a shell corporation, which Alex traced back to a holding company controlled by Randolph Thorne, just 1 week before the vote. And the deciding vote. The committee chairman, who also happened to be the title company representative who signed off on the title insurance for every single one of those 96 new homes. Alex realized the full, terrifying scope of the conspiracy. This wasn't a mistake. It was a corporate coup. Randolph Thorne didn't just trespass. He bribed, he influenced, and he cornered the legal process to steal the land and ensure that no title company would ever flag the error. By the time Alex showed up with his old deed, they could simply claim his claim was invalid because their title insurance was already approved by the committee chairman. This was a $10 million lie, because that's what the land alone was worth before Randolph covered it with houses. And now, the true cost was soaring. Does this remind you of someone in your neighborhood or local government? Let me know in the comments. Sometimes these people think they can get away with anything. Alex carefully scanned and documented everything: the meeting minutes, the suspicious financial transfers, and the name of the title company chairman. He had evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, bribery, and illegal development. This wasn't a petty HOA complaint. This was a criminal investigation in the making. With the smoking gun secured, Alex knew he could finally move. He found a high-powered property attorney in the next city over, a woman known for taking on impossible land battles, and more importantly, a woman who had previously lost a major case to Randolph Thorne and was hungry for revenge. He walked into her immaculate office, dropped the thick file of documentation onto her mahogany desk, and calmly said, "Mr. Thorne built 96 homes on my land. I let him. Now I want to take back the land, and I want him to pay for every single penny of it." The attorney, whose name was Sarah, looked through the file, her initial skepticism turning into genuine shock. She saw the old deed, the fraudulent zoning minutes, and the proof that Randolph had compromised local officials. She looked up at Alex, a glint in her eye. "Alex," she said, "you didn't just give me a lawsuit, you gave me a nuclear option." The plan they hatched was simple, devastating, and required the most difficult kind of patience. They had to wait for the trial. They had to let Randolph Thorne feel completely confident, completely sure that he had won. They had to let him tell his lies in front of a judge. But Randolph Thorne had a long arm. And just when Alex and Sarah thought they were safe and ready for the showdown, the biggest, most shocking twist hit them. A betrayal from the most unexpected place, a move so low it threatened to dismantle their entire case before they ever stepped foot in the courthouse. They were about to find out that the web of corruption went deeper than just the zoning committee. Much, much deeper. We left Alex with his high-powered lawyer, Sarah, file full of evidence, ready to drop the legal nuclear option on Randolph Thorne. They had the old deed, the fraudulent zoning minutes, and the proof that Randolph had compromised local officials. It seemed like the perfect, devastating case. But in the world of HOA fraud, the sharks always swim in deeper water. The moment Randall Thorne got wind that Alex had a top-tier lawyer, a woman with a history of beef with him, no less, he went into damage control. Randall didn't just have money, he had connections, and his entire $100 million development was built on the shaky foundation of Alex's stolen land. He wasn't going to let an old piece of paper ruin his empire. Alex and Sarah were in the final stages of preparing the lawsuit, getting ready to file a temporary restraining order to stop all further sales and construction. They were poring over the property records in Sarah's office, feeling unstoppable. "Randall is cornered," Sarah said, pointing to the zoning minutes. "He bribed his way onto this land. We'll nail him on the fraud first, then we'll hit him with the quiet title action. You get the land back, and he gets to explain to 96 homeowners why their deeds are worthless." Alex felt a wave of relief. His long, quiet game of watching the homes go up was about to pay off. But that's where the story takes a dark, dizzying turn. A few days later, Alex got an unexpected call from his bank. They informed him in a cold, bureaucratic tone that his accounts had been frozen. Not closed, but completely locked down. His credit cards were useless. His savings, the modest emergency fund he was counting on to survive the legal battle, were inaccessible. "Why?" Alex demanded. The bank simply cited a lien, a massive six-figure lien against his entire life based on unpaid taxes and fines. Alex and Sarah were completely baffled. They checked the county lien records immediately, and their blood ran cold. Randall Thorne, through the HOA, had quietly filed a predatory super lien against Alex. They had inflated the tiny shed fines from Part 2, the $100 a day fines Alex had been collecting as evidence, and combined them with a series of fabricated maintenance assessments and community improvement fees for the new subdivision. The total amount owed, $350,000. This wasn't just a fine, this was Randall's masterstroke. The lien was designed to do two things: cut off Alex's funding for the lawsuit by freezing his assets, force a foreclosure on Alex's other property, his actual primary residence, thereby making Alex seem like a desperate, financially ruined plaintiff who was only suing to escape debt. "This is illegal," Alex sputtered, staring at the lien documents. "It's extortion. We haven't even gone to court yet." Sarah's face was grim. "It's dirty, Alex, but it's technically legal in this county." They used a loophole in the HOA's charter that allows them to collect past due assessments and attach a lien on any property you own. It's a move designed to crush people before the judge even hears their name. Alex's whole plan, his patience, his evidence, it all suddenly looked vulnerable. Randall wasn't just fighting the lawsuit. He was trying to bankrupt Alex and destroy his life before the trial even began. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button. It really helps us make more videos like this. Alex had to borrow money just to keep the lights on. He was under immense pressure, and Randall knew it. Then came the true betrayal. Sarah, his fierce lawyer, called him in for an emergency meeting. She didn't look him in the eye. She slid a document across the desk. It was a formal motion to withdraw as Alex's counsel. "I can't do this, Alex," she whispered, her voice tight. "Randall is threatening my firm. He found some old, unrelated tax issue and leveraged it. He told me if I didn't drop your case, he would use his friends at the state bar to get me disbarred. He said, and I quote, 'Your revenge isn't worth your career, Sarah.'" The one person Alex trusted, his biggest ally, was forced to abandon him. The legal titan he had hired was crushed by Randall's influence and corruption. Alex was now alone, completely broke, and facing a $350,000 lien and a foreclosure threat, just weeks before the trial that was supposed to clear his name and expose the fraud. The web of corruption was wider and stronger than he ever imagined. Randall Thorne hadn't just stolen 47 acres. He had taken control of the entire town, including the people Alex needed most. Alex had lost his lawyer. He had lost his money. He was one step away from losing his family home. But he still had the most powerful weapon of all, the original deed, and the evidence that 96 homeowners were living in houses that belonged to him. The question now was, could he represent himself in court with nothing but the truth? Alex was at his lowest point. He was broke, sleeping on a friend's couch and spending every waking hour in the law library. He had to learn years of property law in a few short weeks. But every time he thought about giving up, he pictured the excavator tearing through his inherited forest, and he remembered the 96 families who had been sold a lie by Randall Thorne. He walked into the courtroom alone, carrying a worn briefcase. Randall Thorne, looking smug and polished, sat at the defense table with an entire team of expensive lawyers. The courtroom was packed. News of the mysterious land dispute had leaked, and several Whispering Pines homeowners were there, their faces etched with anxiety. The judge called the case, and Randall's lead attorney, a man named Mr. Harrington, stood up. He immediately went on the attack, just as Alex expected. "Your Honor," Harrington began, his voice dripping with condescension, "we are here because this man, Mr. Alex, is attempting to extort our client, Thorn Development, with a fraudulent, outdated document. He owes the HOA over $350,000 in unpaid fees and is attempting this frivolous lawsuit solely to escape his debts. He is a trespasser, a vandal, and frankly, a financial wreck." Harrington presented the paperwork for the lien, the new county plat maps, and the approved zoning resolutions. He made Randall Thorn look like a visionary community builder and Alex look like a desperate vagrant. When it was Alex's turn to speak, the air in the room was thick with doubt. Alex stood up wearing his best and only suit and gripped the wooden rail. He ignored the HOA fee accusations entirely. He went straight for the fraud. "Your Honor," Alex said, his voice quiet but steady, "the defense relies entirely on the premise that their zoning approval is valid. I'd like to call the head of the Town Planning and Zoning Committee, Councilman Jenkins, to the stand." Harrington objected furiously, but the judge allowed it. Alex was calm. He wasn't aggressive, he was surgical. He asked Jenkins a series of questions about the rapid approval of the Whispering Pines plans, the unusual boundary shift, and the lack of public notification. Jenkins tried to evade, but Alex was ready. He pulled out the documents he had spent weeks finding, the suspicious shell company and the massive, unexplained donation to Jenkins's campaign fund. "Councilman Jenkins," Alex asked, holding up the bank records, "can you explain why the company controlled by the defendant, Randall Thorn, gave you a donation equivalent to 6 months of your salary 1 week before you voted to give him my land?" Jenkins stammered, face flushing red. The judge ordered him to answer, and Jenkins finally had to admit to the payment, claiming it was for consulting. The room gasped. Alex had just exposed the conspiracy in front of the judge. Randall Thorn leaned over to his lawyer, furious, but the game wasn't over. Harrington stood up for the cross-examination. "All this smoke and mirrors doesn't change one fact, Your Honor. The property was acquired legally by the HOA and title insured. Mr. Alex's claim is based on an old scrap of paper that means nothing against a modern plat map." This was the moment Alex had waited for, the moment he had watched 96 homes get built for. "Mr. Harrington is correct, Your Honor," Alex conceded, much to the surprise of everyone, including the judge. "The claim is indeed based on a paper, an old paper, the original deed." Alex then walked up to the judge's bench and with a perfectly steady hand presented the document. He didn't just hand over the deed. He handed over the original certified survey map attached to it, signed by the county surveyor in 1948, which specifically referenced a permanent granite marker at the northeast corner of the property. "The modern plat map Randall Thorn used to build his subdivision," Alex stated, "is off by exactly 200 feet. The boundary of my family's land is not measured by paper. It is measured by physical markers placed in the ground nearly 80 years ago. Mr. Thorn's surveyors conveniently ignored that marker because it proved his fraud. He had 2 witnesses ready, the retired, elderly county surveyor and a professional title researcher who testified that the marker had been correctly located just 2 weeks prior. The judge leaned forward, looking from the old document to the recent surveyor's testimony. He then looked straight at a sweating Randall Thorn. Alex spoke one last time, his voice rising with conviction. "Mr. Thorn and his team built 96 homes on land they knew was stolen. They did it because they thought the original owner wouldn't notice or wouldn't fight back. They tried to ruin my life, but all they did was increase the scale of their crime. Your Honor, I am not asking for a fine. I am asking for the quiet title to my land, and I am asking for every homeowner in Whispering Pines estates to be compensated by the man who sold them a worthless deed." The courtroom was silent. Randall Thorn's face was white. He had not only lost the land, but Alex had effectively weaponized the 96 innocent homeowners against him. Alex sat down. He had just delivered the checkmate. He had let the HOA sell 96 homes, and now he was about to prove that every one of those deeds was void. The full crushing weight of his patience was about to come down on Randall Thorn. This is it, the culmination of Alex's long game. He just delivered the checkmate, weaponizing 96 innocent homeowners against Randall Thorn right there in the courtroom. The silence in the courtroom after Alex sat down was deafening. Every eye was on Randall Thorn. His expensive legal team was scrambling, whispering urgently. The 96 homeowners in the gallery were openly panicking. The judge, however, was totally composed. He had seen the evidence, The fraudulent zoning vote, the bribes, the illegal easement, and the undisputed fact of the original deed tied to the permanent granite marker. The judge banged his gavel and looked directly at Randall Thorne. "Mr. Thorne, the court finds overwhelming evidence of premeditated fraud, conspiracy, and trespass. The ownership of the 47 acres in question, parcel 47B, is hereby quiet titled back to the plaintiff, Mr. Alex." That was the win. Alex got his land back, but he wasn't done. The judge continued. As a result of this ruling, all deeds and titles issued to the 96 homeowners in the Whispering Pines Estates subdivision, which rely on the fraudulent inclusion of parcel 47B, are rendered legally void. A wave of gasps and muttered cries swept through the gallery. But here's the twist, the sweet, ultimate revenge Alex had patiently waited for. Alex and his former lawyer, Sarah, had planned for this moment. They weren't fighting for money. They were fighting for justice and total destruction of the fraudulent operation. The judge announced the final orders: compensation to homeowners. Randall Thorne, Thorne Development, and the entire HOA board were held personally liable to compensate all 96 homeowners for the full current market value of their homes, plus moving costs and emotional distress damages. This was a massive financial blow, potentially over $80 million in liability, designed to utterly crush Thorne Development. HOA dissolution. The Whispering Pines Estates Homeowners Association was immediately dissolved by court order due to being founded on criminal fraud. The land, Alex's 47 acres, were his again, free and clear. Crucially, the court also ordered Randall Thorne to pay Alex the full cost of cleaning up the site, including removing the illegally dug drainage ditch, restoring the damaged creek bank, and replanting the heritage trees the HOA cut down. This was more than justice. It was a total demolition of Randall Thorne's empire. He was facing certain bankruptcy, dozens of lawsuits from the angry homeowners he scammed, and probable criminal charges based on the bribery evidence Alex uncovered. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button. It really helps us make more videos like this. The courtroom erupted into a chaotic mix of celebrations and angry shouts. The 96 homeowners, initially panicked, quickly turned their fury away from Alex and onto Randall, who was being escorted out of the courtroom, his face a mask of ruined arrogance. Alex walked out of the court that day, no longer a lone victim, but the owner of 47 restored acres and the man who brought down a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. He still had the $350,000 lien hanging over him, but within a week, the court ordered the lien to be immediately expunged, ruling it was nothing more than an act of criminal intimidation. Alex's bank accounts were unfrozen, and his life was his again. The ultimate outcome: Alex never did build his cabin on the full 47 acres. He realized that the greatest victory was saving the land. He later worked with a local land trust to put a permanent conservation easement on 40 of the acres, ensuring that his family's beautiful forest and creek would never be built upon again. The last 7 acres, he kept those debt-free with a tiny, permitted shed where he now stays, enjoying the silence. As for the 96 homes, they became an absolute legal nightmare, a famous cautionary tale in property law. The houses were slowly repurchased by a massive bank detached from the failed HOA and eventually sold back to their occupants at a significant loss, wiping out Randall Thorne's profit margin entirely. The subdivision continued to exist, but the HOA, it was gone forever. Alex finally had the piece he bought the land for. He won the game not by being the fastest or the loudest, but by being the most patient and letting his enemy overplay their hand. But even after all this, the question remains: are there more people like Randall Thorne out there? And is the corruption truly over?